don't want to pay tax.
Contrary to the media reports, KPMG has not retracted the SARS report in its entirety. Please read our statement again. Given the failure, that's in quotation marks, given the failure to appropriately apply our own risk management and quality controls, that part of the report which refers to the conclusions, recommendations, and legal opinions should no longer be relied upon, close quotes.
It was an attempt at damage control that backfired stupendously.
This abhorrent, unethical and unprofessional conduct by KPMG has left SARS with no option but to consider the following legal route.
One of the 4 largest accounting firms in the world, KPMG, suffers a massive loss of face, credibility, and clients in South Africa.
KPMG has got a lot to answer because it's South Africans' money and they need to come and account to us.
They were paid amounts 2.5 million and 2.2 million, but the reports that they were supposed to do were not finalized.
KPMG's partial recall of its SARS report, some say partial in more ways than one, has opened a cupboard of skeletons in the tax collection agency's closet.
The recommendation was that indeed SARS ran an unlawful rogue unit led by and reporting to individuals in the organization, some with insidious gross misconduct committed by both those who were in the leadership position at the time.
How a saga that began with a love tryst ended up jeopardizing national security, careers, and fortunes. It had been a week of stories revolving around covert intelligence gathering. 10 years after they first surfaced, spy tapes were back in the spotlight, and so were the 783 charges against President Zuma. The judgment had been reserved, arguments made and analyzed. The buzz was slowly dying. Everyone was easing into the weekend when a press release threw the cat among the pigeons. KPMG had dropped a bombshell. 9 of its top South African executives had been forced to resign, including its Chief Executive Officer, Trevor Hoole, and Chief Operating Officer and Country Risk Manager, Stephen Lowe. It is the largest number of partners to ever leave the division at once. The axe fell after an investigation launched by KPMG International was concluded. The probe found what KPMG described as falling short of its own standards on various counts. The statement admitted failure on 3 counts: its work on a report around a controversial unit in SARS, the work it had done for the Gupta family businesses, and the conduct of its employees. The firm withdrew parts of its SARS report and confessed that the audit work done for Gupta entities in certain instances fell well short of the quality expected. It blamed the management of Gupta family-owned companies for misleading the auditors and absolved its members. As it cleared out the management of its South Africa division, KPMG also cleared itself of any kind of involvement in illegal affairs. The press release was followed by a press conference. Shocked and appalled, the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services addressed the media.
Hardly had the ink or the paper from the printer had become cold, KPMG had already issued a statement, without due regard of giving the client the opportunity and the time to respond and to look into these matters. SARS has been taken completely aback by KPMG's aberrant and ethical conduct. KPMG unilaterally announced the purported withdrawal of its report, despite the existence of a service-level agreement governing the relationship between the two parties. On the 15th of September, at 09:24, an email was sent to the Office of the Commissioner, sent to my office by Norton Rose Fulbright, advising me the following. Dear Commissioner, SARS report / KPMG South Africa. We act for KPMG South Africa and KPMG International. We refer to the extensive document investigative review and collation of documents that KPMG South Africa conducted for SARS in 2014. I'm quoting this letter precisely to indicate that hardly had the ink or the paper from the printer had become cold, KPMG had already issued a statement, without due regard of giving the client the opportunity and the time to respond and to look into these matters.
I think KPMG, and maybe it's arrogance. Somebody said it's colonial arrogance, that this is an African state institution, we'll just send them an SMS. Because I'll tell you that they sent us an email on Friday and say, we looked into the report that we gave you 2 years ago, we picked up that our people didn't do particular things, we're withdrawing it. We're going to issue a media statement and we'll pay you the 23 million if you want. If you don't want, we're going to contribute it. While we were still scratching our heads, they issued a media statement. No decency to meet with us, no decency to talk to us. As we speak now, we don't even know what exactly has been withdrawn.
Tom Moyane looked and sounded furious. A report for which KPMG had charged 23 million rands had all of a sudden unilaterally been withdrawn. To make matters more complicated, only certain portions and not the entire report was recalled. The parts referring to then SARS Commissioner Pravin Gordhan's role and involvement were retracted with an apology.
The report belongs to SARS, as KPMG has surrendered all rights to SARS. It follows that the report is an exclusive property of the South African Revenue Service, and it constitutes South African Revenue Service intellectual property. The South African Revenue Service sees KPMG's conduct as nothing else but a dismal attempt to portray SARS and its leadership in particular as incompetent, inefficient, and involved in a witch hunt activity. The report was given to us, prepared in 2014. First, on the 20, I can't remember the date, of January 2016, the report is given to us as final. A year and a half thereafter, the report is now considered as inconclusive, and if I recall here, which cannot be relied upon, we find it completely disingenuous, completely unethical, and borders in giving us a sense that the organization has failed to conduct its activity despite the terms and conditions for which this work was given to us in good faith. I have on record here the previous CEO sending us a report titled KPMG report with a letter accompanying it as final, which means one ought to have, in this instance, done all the quality assurance attested to. But to come down 1 year down the year, only single one report, and say the contents therefore cannot be relied upon.
What prompted the partial recall? It was a question that flummoxed many observers. But let's first understand what it was that KPMG thought was improper.
Let's take a look at the parts of the report that KPMG withdrew. Under the guidance of Pillay, a covert and rogue intelligence unit was in contravention of the rule of law. It was established in SARS. We found no evidence that the Minister of Finance knew about the existence of the unit in SARS. The unit was established by Pillay at the time when Gordon was Commissioner of SARS. We found no evidence that Gordon was informed about the existence of the unit. However, considering his position as accounting officer, it is reasonable to expect that he ought to have known of the existence of the unit.
Herein comes the politics behind what so far seems to be a matter related to taxes, businesses and auditing. The sections declared null and void pertain to just one man, Pravin Gordhan. What appeared to be a concession to him did not find favor with Gordhan either. Pravin Gordhan was at the helm of SARS when the so-called rogue spy unit came into being. He has consistently denied that the unit indulged in any kind of unlawful behavior. This, despite not one, but 3 different probes indicating otherwise.
SARS had a unit which was not only established legally, but was illegally intercepting taxpayer information. We then want to confirm that upon the appointment of the new commissioner into SARS in 2014, the Sekhakhane Commission delivered the report on the 5th of November 2014, with serious conclusions and recommendations. Chief amongst others, the recommendation was that indeed SARS ran an unlawful rogue unit led by and reporting to individuals in the organization, some with insidious gross misconduct committed by both those who were in the leadership position at the time.
A lot of intrigue surrounds the establishment, existence and functioning of the spy unit. The decision to set up a unit within SARS was taken in 2007 when Gordhan was the commissioner of SARS. It specialized in infiltrating crime syndicates. However, the unit is accused of numerous transgressions. Illegally intercepting emails and phone calls of taxpayers. Agents that were paid from a secret cost center. Agents conducted physical surveillance and house infiltrations to spy on taxpayers. The unit became a law unto itself, with members using fake IDs and aliases. There were also allegations of spying on top cops and eavesdropping on politicians. Interestingly, the antics of this covert unit came to light after an advocate, Belinda Walter, laid a complaint against the SARS investigations head, van Lochenberg, after their relationship went sour. Van Lochenberg discovered that Walter was acting as a lawyer for the alleged tobacco smugglers that he and SARS were investigating for tax evasion, fraud and money laundering. Walter confessed to van Lochenberg that she was also working as a spy for a unit of the State Security Agency. SARS established a review panel once Walter had laid the complaint against van Lochenberg. Since then, 3 different investigations by the SARS review panel, Advocate Sekhakhane report and Justice Kroon Advisory Board have all come to the same conclusion. There was an illegal unit operating within SARS.
On the 28th of February 2015, the Minister of Finance, the then Minister of Finance, Mr. Nene, established a SARS advisory board, which was chaired by the retired Judge Kroon, with a mandate to look into SARS processes with priority, bearing into the investigation and guidance on the Sekhakhane report. It is common cause that the Kroon Advisory Board found that the establishment of the secret unit within SARS in 2007, which covertly gathered intelligence, was unlawful.
Irrespective of the findings, Pravin Gordhan steadfastly maintains and now wants KPMG also to state that the research and investigative unit was legal and its activities were also within the law. He has accused Tom Moyane of a witch hunt, a charge that SARS vehemently refutes.
Of course, people are saying Commissioner Moyane opened a case against Mr. Pravin. No, we didn't open a case. We opened a case against Mr. Ivan Pillay and the people who have confessed. If that investigation catches Mr. Gordhan, it's not our fault. We didn't open a case against him. So we are in our statement explaining that sequence so that we're telling South Africans that if there is anything that Mr. Moyane has done, was to do the right thing and open a case against people allegedly giving each other 950,000 to install cameras in the office of the police and the Hawks illegally.
There is no love lost between Gordhan and Moyane. Gordhan has gone as far as to suggest that Moyane is not competent enough to lead the revenue agency.
I think the problem started when he started to then acted on the Sikhakhane report. I think that is where the problem started. And the problems never ended. And the problem is the Sikhakhane report exposed something that was not expected from SARS because those who ran SARS before him were over-glorified. So when the Sikhakhane report came and said, but the possibility exists that the people who came before him might not have been ran a clean ship, I think the attacks started. Very supported by the mainstream media. The mainstream media has been very central in attacking Commissioner Moyane.
And media would like us to believe that our former Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, is a superhero on a mission to save South Africa from state capture, when in fact he may well be the protagonist. The media as well is portraying Tom Moyane as a villain rather than a victim in this whole saga. And I think we're going to see a lot of truth unfolding in the next while. And I think we're going to be very surprised at who is the captured and who is the capturer. As far as the comments on Tom Moyane, I find this ongoing attack on him as well as other colleagues and comrades by the previous Minister of Finance extremely irresponsible. In fact, they speak of fracture and betrayal, and it's not what one would expect of a leader of this ilk. And I think he tries to create a narrative which is reinforced by the mainstream media that he alone, as Pravin Gordhan, is the only viable finance minister we've ever had in this country. He alone is the only caretaker, not only of SARS, but of the economy at large. And this is extremely undermining and possibly very racist, actually.
The tussle between Gordhan and Moyane is not recent. KPMG's rescission has only added fuel to the fire that had been simmering for long. The firm itself is also facing the heat.
The commissioner must go ahead with its work because it's not his personal, money that is being spent. It's South Africans' money that is being spent. It's the taxpayers that the one that we are concerned about. That at the end of the day, if you've been going into a report and it gets abandoned just like that, that shouldn't be an area of concern because we could have spent that money on some other work or we could have been building houses, something else. But you can't just, as a multinational company, tell South Africans, now I'm tired and I'm abandoning this report with no consequences on your side. KPMG has got a lot to answer because it's South Africans' money and they need to come and account to us.
If the agency thought that it could wash its hands off all the controversies by issuing a press release and sacking some employees, it could not have been more wrong. The backlash has been more severe than the trigger. Several companies have already dumped the auditors. Others are reviewing their association.
KPMG and KPMG International, as the press statement was released yesterday, I think a 14-page press statement was released, they incriminated themselves. They discredited themselves. So I just cannot see how they can expect legitimately any entity in this country or elsewhere to actually believe that they are an entity that is worth, because they admitted themselves and they incriminated themselves and, as I say, discredited themselves.
This instance has cast a shadow on the entire body of work done by KPMG. The agency is at pains to convince the clients of its credibility. Questions are also being raised around the timing of the withdrawal and the reason behind it.
The agenda is very clear to cast aspersion. I find it very strange that we are being asked of an agenda. The agenda is that there has been, and we continue and wait for the requisite authorities in government to conclude their part and their section in the investigation that is taking place as to what is really behind this, who is behind this. I do not have the skills, the requisite skills within SARS to be doing what is called agenda searching processes.
When this issue when this media statement was issued on Friday, we saw people crisscrossing media houses, the former employees of SARS, including the former Minister of Finance, claiming that no, this shows that the prosecution and the disciplinaries were unfair. And we are saying in our statement that it's either those people were grossly ignorant or were deliberate to mislead the public. One of the things that we even suspect, and I think the Commissioner is saying that, is we hope KPMG is not playing into some funny political space.
The executives that were fired, they owe this country a moral duty to disclose as to who has been putting undue pressure to them, because the statements that have been released by KPMG, they are incoherent. For example, they are replacing certain aspects of the report that they issued, but they are not even naming, well, who is the complainant and what evidence did that complainant actually adduce, and to what extent was then, when they were functus officio, because their report had been finalized, who actually made them to believe that they could still go and make comment on a report that was completely out of their hands.
KPMG tried to make amends by saying that it would return or donate the millions earned for its controversial work, a gesture described as colonial arrogance by some. But this is not the first time a KPMG will be emptying its coffers to pay for its sins.
This is not the first time that KPMG has come under fire for irregularities. Let's take a look at some of those examples. The first example comes from August of 2017 in the US. KPMG was fined more than $6 million over an audit of Miller Energy. Now, the reason why is they failed to spot gross overvaluations in the audit. They also allowed an oil firm to overvalue assets by over 100 times. Taking a look at the next example there, 6, including 5 partners, were sacked for breaching ethical standards. This was in April of 2017 in the US. The audit team received improper warnings of regulator inspections. Now, taking a look at the next example there, in June of 2018 in the UK, or 2008 rather, in the UK, KPMG was fined £1.5 million for their role in the collapse of an independent insurance. Now, the accounts showed a profit of £22 million when they should have shown a loss of £105 million. The last example there, KPMG paid $22 million in 2006 to settle litigation relating to Xerox audits. Now, the reason why there is they willfully aided and abetted violations of anti-fraud record-keeping internal controls.
Remember that this particular KPMG report and withdrawal of its own forensic work indicates that we have a situation whereby in South Africa we have legal firms, we have auditors firms, we have forensic firms, we have financial institution firms that have continuously been engaged in fraudulent, dubious and unethical reporting, as well as providing of services in an unethical manner. And now that one of the big top firms, which is an auditing and forensic firm and an accounting firm, has come out clearly recusing itself of its own particular report, it tells you the depth of the rot.
Unfortunately, I must say, this is not the end of KPMG's troubles with that statement that said don't rely on certain sections of the report we issued in terms of SARS. It is just only the beginning of the problems. But the most important question, Cindy, we must ask is the following. Who exactly unduly pressurized KPMG executives, and more so in the UK, to take this unprecedented step, which on the face of it is unlawful, and if anything, has only just triggered an avalanche that's going to sink this company.
We quite clearly take a serious exception to the way KPMG has handled this particular matter. These are taxpayers' money. It's not their money, as you always say, that it is in the interest of South Africans that we know how deep in this, KPMG play a particular role.
It's not only public sector that we must censure. We must actually censure the private sector, because it cannot, continue to collaborate because if it behaves badly, it even undermines not only the potential for growth, but it also undermines the profitability of companies.
The men with the scanners now find themselves under scrutiny. Few are willing to buy KPMG's version of no evidence of dishonesty. Audit watchdogs, parliamentary oversight committees, existing clients and SARS, all in hot pursuit. The Finance Ministry now wants all the work being done by KPMG for the state to be reviewed. KPMG now stares at dire consequences as its partial recall leads to a full-blown crisis.